Hey friends! John here. Welcome to The Martial Actor. Today I'll be reacting to clips from season 1 of Cobra Kai. Now this just dropped on Netflix, so I'm catching up, and I just finished season 1, and honestly, I'm pleasantly surprised. I remember back when I saw ads for it on YouTube Red, I was pretty skeptical about it. Honestly, I thought it was going to be mostly carried by nostalgia, and they definitely used the nostalgia card, but the series does stand alone as its own show. I've been really pleasantly surprised with both the character development and also the choreo. So I'm excited to show you guys what I think. Okay, so for those of you that don't know, Cobra Kai follows Johnny Lawrence as a grown-up man. So he is like the antagonist in the first two Karate Kid films, which is why this is interesting, right? We're following the villain and seeing his kind of arc in the show. So this kid that's getting the Pepto-Bismol poured on him, his name's Miguel. He just moved in. He's kind of getting picked on by the school bullies. And so Johnny Lawrence is seeing this happening, and he comes in to save him. This really mirrors the relationship that Johnny Lawrence has with Miguel, comparing it to the relationship that Daniel LaRusso had with Mr. Miyagi.
Just leave the dork alone. What? See this guy? Eating his dinner at the mini mart like a bum?
Wait, I think I know this guy.
He's a jerk off.
So yeah, he hasn't opened the dojo yet. He's working as like a handyman, and he's like a washed up bum, right? So.
Oh really?
Get the hell out of
So
here.
the Asian dude kind of pushes him. And then he starts strong with a jump crescent kick. So, first thing is I would never start a fight with a jump crescent kick because it's a really big kick. It's very flashy, but because of that, it's very telegraphed and it's super easy to dodge or block. However, in films and in TV, crescent kicks by themselves just look so good. So, it's fun to see. Second thing is, I noticed almost immediately when I started watching this is that Johnny Lawrence, or the actor that plays him, William Zabka, he's not at the top of his game when it comes to fighting on film. Now, there could be a couple of reasons behind this. Obviously, it's been 30 years since he filmed Karate Kid, so I wouldn't expect him as an actor to be keeping up with the top of his fitness game, the top of his martial arts game for 30 years in between the first movie and now. However, they could also be playing it as a character choice because Johnny Lawrence is a washed-up martial arts teacher. He hasn't been practicing. He doesn't have his class yet. He doesn't have his dojo yet. So really, he has the techniques and the knowledge, but the practice, the force, the speed isn't really there. Now, stepping away from character development and talking about fighting technique on film, one thing that I notice from amateur fighters on film is that a lot of times they will have a strong beginning to a strike and a strong strike, but they won't necessarily have a good re-chamber. Now that's an issue because cameras are not as good at picking up motion, specifically fast motion, as the human eye. The human eye is very good at tracking motion. Unless you're filming at a very high FPS, cameras cannot pick up the motion of fighting. So you really need to have a good beginning, middle, and end in order to make it sell. Now, most actors that I know that aren't very good fighters will have a strong beginning and have a strong middle, but they won't bring it back quickly. When that happens on camera, it makes it look laggy, it makes it look slow, it can make it look like it's lacking power or speed. Usually the way to fix that is just have a good re-chamber. What I mean is instead of going like this and stopping at the strike and then pulling it back, you really need to have a good re-chamber in order to make it read. So, and he's like complaining because he hasn't stretched in 30 years. So we get a fun sequence here. Good spinning side kick, front kick, good gut punch, sweep the leg. He knees the guy, and then he gets tackled into the telephone pole. Now, again, that was a sequence of about 8 or 9 moves. A lot of times, even in really large budget films, you won't see a sequence that long because a lot of actors don't have the skill in order to do a sequence that long without messing up or without endangering their partners. Again, I think that's a really good character choice. William Zabka, as an actor, is a trained fighter, so he's got the knowledge and got the skill in order to do 8, 9, 10, 11 moves in a row in a sequence without cutting. So that's cool to see. gets an elbow, throws the kid against the car. We get a little breather.
Holy shit, how did you...
And then the Asian dude comes up and tackles him. Gets a good gut punch in.
What's the matter? Have you trouble breathing?
So he just did a straight up kung fu grab escape. So the Asian dude comes up and starts choking him. Johnny Lawrence immediately puts one arm in between the Asian dude's arm and his throat so he can have more room to breathe. Then he takes his extra arm, elbows in the stomach, and then that causes your assailant to bend over. Once they're bent over, he does a modified hip throw and throws him over his shoulder onto the ground. That's textbook kung fu, really great technique. Super fun to do.
Is that all you got, ladies? Come on, guys. Let's go. Get off me.
So he does another reverse crescent kick, gets punched, does a headbutt, back fist, clocks the face, did a double open-handed knife hand block there, that was fun.
Hey, get off the kick.
And then he gets maced in the face by the cops, and that's the end of this fight. I really like this clip because it's doing a good job of framing the relationship between Johnny Lawrence and Miguel in a very similar way that Daniel Russo had with Mr. Miyagi. In the same way that Mr. Miyagi took Daniel Russo under his wing, protected him, and mentored him, Johnny Lawrence is doing the same thing with Miguel. He's protecting him from these bullies. He's going to start tutoring him in martial arts, and it's a really fun mirroring of the old films while also contextualizing in a completely new and different way. And it really sets up the rest of the series in a really great way. Let's jump forward to the next clip. Okay, so the second clip is the Cafeteria Fight. They were really marketing this heavily when they first started showing the series on YouTube Red. Miguel is about to get in a fight with Kyler, who's the same Asian dude from the first clip, because he's picking on a girl that he likes. So Kyler again shoves him.
Lame-ass karate this time? It's not lame-ass karate.
And Miguel blocks, get him into an arm lock, and then punches him in the face. Really strong start. So Kyler tackles him on the table, kind of throws him on the other table, and we get some just random grappling here. So he's in the same arm lock as before. Miguel does that exact same move that Johnny Lawrence did in the last clip. So as soon as Kyler gets him in the neck lock, Miguel takes his arm, puts it in between Kyler's arm and his throat in order to give him room to breathe, then takes his elbow, elbows Kyler in the stomach, Kyler bends over, then instead of throwing Kyler over his shoulder, instead he kind of ducks, wrist locks him, and then punches him in the face. That's a textbook kung fu grab escape. Very effective, really fun to see here. Follows up with a spinning side kick. So he does a leg sweep, does a front kick, and a spinning reverse crescent. So again, I'm seeing the same thing with the kicks here. They look a little bit slow, they look a little bit stunted, they don't look like they have a ton of force behind them, and it's because of the re-chambers. So Miguel is doing the same thing that Johnny Lawrence was doing in the last clip again. He's not re-chambering his kicks fast enough to make it read as well as it could on camera. But it could be a character choice. Miguel just started studying karate. We're only 5 episodes in. He's only had 5 episodes of study. So again, I don't mind because he's at the beginning of his journey. So now we get some fun kind of parkour stuff. He kind of flips over the table, grabs the cafeteria tray, and starts whacking everyone with it. Gets a good knee in on the back. And again, a hook kick, and then the cafeteria slam to the face. So I really like the choreo of using a cafeteria tray. I am a big fan of using props in fight scenes, especially when they're found in the environment. It's super fun. It's a really organic way of tying the environment into a fight. And it's just fun to do as an actor and as a choreographer. However, realistically, using a plastic cafeteria tray wouldn't be the most effective weapon in order to do damage to people just because it's so light and flimsy. So some of those strikes where he hits people across the face or hits people on the back and they fall to the ground, they're a little bit harder to buy. But using a cafeteria tray to parry blocks or just block attacks would be very useful. And he did that here, so that was cool to see. One thing I would change is the last strike with the tray against Kyler's face. Instead of framing it so that the strike was coming in the depth of camera, I would have switched camera to put it here and then had the strike cross frame this way, that would have made it look a little bit more dynamic than it did in this shot. It's just personal taste, personal preference. It's how I would have done it. Let's move forward to the last clip. Now, before we do, I will say there are spoilers in this one. So if you haven't seen it, go check it out and then come back and watch. Otherwise, let's go. Okay, so this is the last episode of the first season. We're at a tournament and Miguel is fighting a character called Robbie. So before we get into it, I want to point out a few things that I noticed. First, everyone in this tournament is wearing a black belt, which is not correct. So in a tournament like this, usually they divide it up into ranks and age and sex. So you normally wouldn't have girls spar boys. You would have boys spar boys and girls spar girls. Second thing is you divide it by age. Now these are all for under 18, so I totally buy that they would be in the same division. But the third thing you would divide by is rank. So here they are all wearing black belts, but that would technically be inaccurate. There's no way that these characters are black belts, having only been studying for like maybe a handful of months. They should be like orange belts, maybe purple belts, but like they would definitely not be black. However, like I get it, it's a TV show and you want them all to wear black belts, so that's totally fine. The second thing I noticed is that all these guys are duking it out bare knuckle, which would never happen in a real tournament. Most tournaments require you to wear gloves, some type of helmet, usually a face guard, a mouth guard, and then guys would also wear a cup. Some tournaments require even more gear than that, but there is no way that any tournament would ever allow their contestants to spar bare knuckle. There's just way too high a risk of injury and way too high a risk of liability for whoever's throwing the tournament. However, I can see how all of those pieces of equipment would not look great on film. So yeah, I totally get why they decided not to. Again, it's not the most realistic, but it's film, so who cares?
Ready? And fight!
Okay, so we start off strong. We get 2 parries, kicks, flying knee, more parries, push, and then a jump spinning crescent kick. So I really like how they framed the jump spinning crescent kick. The camera panned as the kick was finishing its strike. It was super dynamic and I really like how it ended up looking. The rest of the sequence was actually pretty tight as well, especially if you compare this clip to the clip we just watched. Miguel is faster, he's rechambering better, and it really shows that his character is progressing in the art of martial arts. So I can appreciate that they're showing that. They're showing his progression as a character and showing that he's getting better at fighting. It's really fun to watch.
Keen and Miyagi-Do get the first point.
So, speaking of points, most tournaments will do 3-point sparring. So what that means is when you have 2 contestants, they'll spar until one of them gets a clean hit, and then the judge will award them 1 point. You usually do the best of 3. If a point is contested, a lot of times they'll have multiple judges, and then whoever judges in the majority gets the point. Sometimes if a judge can't clearly see what happened, they'll say no point because they couldn't see. But yeah, it's called 3-point sparring. It's used in most tournaments, and I think it's cool that they're using it here. It's something that they did in the first Karate Kid as well. So yeah.
1 point. Remember the pitching machine. Go get in. Ready? And fight.
So spinning back kick, couple of front kicks, reverse crescent, 1-2, and then a hook kick to the shoulder. That was like a thrust punch to the ribs. Again, like good sequence, really clean. I'm liking how it looks.
Now it's 1-1. Ready? And fight.
Okay, we get parry, block, get an elbow to the shoulder, sweep the leg, then he comes in for a thrust punch to the ribs.
Point. That makes it 2-1 for Diaz.
Time. Hey, you all right? All right, listen to me. Listen to me. Look at me. Just remember to breathe and focus.
So this
All right, you hear me?
is
Just
part of why
your
I
balance.
fell in love with this show.
Keeney, you ready?
This character development that's happening here. So you can see that Denny LaRusso is kind of coaching this kid, Robbie. Now, spoiler alert, Robbie is Johnny Lawrence's son. And so you get this really interesting dynamic between Johnny and Daniel, because now it's the next generation of kids, and Johnny Lawrence's son is learning from his lifelong rival, Daniel LaRusso. So it brings in this really interesting aspect of conflict that didn't exist in the first films. I think that the show does a really good job of framing that conflict. You could see even there during the pep talk between Daniel and Robbie, Johnny Lawrence didn't have any lines, but they showed him reacting to that and showing him kind of reacting to feeling like he's failing as a father, feeling like he's wanting to reconnect with his son, and feeling jealousy that Daniel LaRusso is the one that's doing that connecting instead of him. It's so interesting to watch, and it brings this aspect of character development and character motivation that you usually do not get in fighting films. So I am here for it. I love character-driven stuff, and I think we need more character-driven stuff in the world of fighting cinema. So I really love seeing it.
All right, Diaz, let's go. Fighting position.
And you get some cool chi breathing from Robbie, which is like a fun little thing.
Come on, Robbie.
Fight!
And I really like that camera work, that dolly, where the camera comes up. Okay, so that blocking sequence was actually choreographed super well. So Robbie his shoulder's injured, he can only use one arm, right? He's using a technique that only very advanced sparrers can do. So when he's blocking with one arm, but he's returning to center after each block. When you return to center after each block, it gives you enough time to react to the next one, and you can block a series of strikes with just one arm. You can see that's what he did. As soon as he's done exerting just enough momentum to redirect the position of the fist coming at him so that it no longer hits him, he's returning back to center. That gives him enough agility, and it gives him enough speed to be able to block a multitude of strikes with just one arm. I love seeing that. I haven't seen it in a movie in so long, and it's a really advanced technique. So again, love seeing it.
Out of bounds! Out of bounds! No point! Out of bounds!
All right, let's go, Robbie. Tempo.
Ready? And fight!
Okay, we get like a shove. Robbie's on the ground, and he gets like a double-legged side kick. So you could see there in that frame, they kind of held the kick out for longer than would be humanly possible. He was definitely on wires for that. So they would have hooked his ankles up to wires and had it being suspended in midair as he did the kick in order to accentuate that moment. It looked great. I didn't mind.
How about that? A two-legged kick!
And you can see that Miguel is like super pissed. And so he kind of does a cheap move there because Robbie's shoulder is hurt, right? So this brings in a really interesting aspect of character development, right? We're flashing back, and Johnny Lawrence is seeing the moment in his past where his old instructor kind of toxically instructed him to take a cheap shot, against Daniel LaRusso.
Okay, just be careful.
I found his weakness, Sensei. It's his shoulder.
Look, I know we want to win, but it's got to be the right way. We don't have to fight dirty.
Dirty? There's nothing dirty about winning, Sensei. You taught me that.
See, and so this is such interesting character development because Johnny Lawrence has been teaching his dojo, teaching his Cobra Kai dojo as a very hard, closed fist kind of mentality, which is like strike first, strike hard, no mercy, blah, blah, blah. But it's kind of coming back to bite him in the butt. He doesn't want his son Robbie to get hurt by his prize pupil. And so he's kind of seeing this like old world mentality clashing with his like contemporary character growth. And he's trying to figure out where he sits in that. It's just such an interesting dynamic. But he's also seeing that like these old school tactics, old school knowledge that he's kind of passed onto his student maybe isn't what is the best for him. Maybe isn't what is the best for people in general. So it's, again, framing his character development in a very interesting way, in a very driven way. And it's just so fascinating to watch.
Mercy.
And the violins.
Whoever wins the next point will be our new champion.
It's 2-2. Next point wins.
Hey.
Okay, good luck to both of you. Ready? And fight!
So we get some parry, knee strike, spinning hook. Okay, so I did have a problem with that spinning hook the first time I saw it. It missed, but then they kind of framed it in a way so that Miguel dodged it, but then still got hit on the back. Like, that would never happen with a spinning hook. He dodged the strike at the beginning. There's no way that a spinning hook would, like, curl and then hit your back. It's just, like, not physiologically how those kicks work. But most people don't know that, so I'm sure nobody cares. And we get an axe kick. Miguel catches it. And then he kicks him in the shoulder. Does a spinning back kick to his solar plexus. So right there, they used a speed ramp to kind of slow everything down. Now, I've talked about this in the past. I like speed ramps, but I don't like it when they're used too much. That one for me was a little bit too long. It was a sequence of like probably about 4 seconds that speed ramp lasted. I think they work better if they're used in much smaller sequences. Instead of having that whole sequence be a speed ramp, I would have broken it up into chunks or maybe just shortened it. But what do you guys think? And we see that Robbie lost the competition, Miguel won. Robbie kind of like bows. And Johnny Lawrence is trying to talk to his son,
Who saw that coming, huh?
but
I
can't
know
get
I
to him.
didn't. Without further ado, let me present the trophy to this year's new champion, Miguel Diaz.
So
and
the fighting is over, but I want everyone to
Dojo.
really pay close attention to this moment particularly.
Anything you want to say to the people, son?
I just want to say that if it wasn't for my sensei, I wouldn't be here. So this is for Sensei Johnny Lawrence and Cobra Kai.
So you can see that Miguel is doing his acceptance speech. The Cobra Kai dojo is chanting victory, and Johnny Lawrence is shaded in black and is totally disappointed with everything that happened. It's a completely hollow victory. If anything, we're feeling the regret that he feels. And it's such great character. Like, it's so great to watch this show because it's framed and grounded in this such interesting character drive and development that is Johnny Lawrence's arc and is his character. It's all about his relationship with Daniel Russo and how it has evolved, but then also hasn't moved at all since they were kids. It's about the relationship with his son and how complex that is, with his rival kind of taking on the father figure that he wants to be to his son. And then it's about him mentoring Miguel and kind of filling the void that he wants his son to be in, but then also messing up the instruction between himself and Miguel, because again, here Miguel is being overly aggressive and toxically masculine in order to prove that victory should come at any cost, which is not something that necessarily resonates with him anymore. Anyway, it's just really fun to see this. It's really fun to watch. If you haven't checked it out, I would highly recommend it. And that's it for today. So take care of yourself, take care of each other, and I'll see you next time. Three, two, oh, excuse me. I just, let's see. Miyagi took Daniel Russo under his wing, but, and I've, let's see. What am I gonna say? Testing to make sure we're still in focus.